In this video, we're going to look at how to create sub-sequences here in Avid Media Composer. So in previous videos, we looked at how to edit sequences into other sequences, how to edit a part of a sequence into another sequence, and now in this video, we're going to look at creating sub-sequences. And creating sub-sequences is pretty much the same as creating sub-clips, which I have shown in other videos. So right there's our mark, and pull this down, and there we go. We have a sub-clip. So sub-sequences work pretty much the same way. So let me go ahead and demonstrate this for you. Now I have another sequence right here. It is currently empty. First off, this is going to be the IK GP1 Grand Piano 1 versus the Addictive Keys Studio Grand. So let's go ahead and here we have the studio or the grand piano that we need. So what do you say we go ahead and just cut this entire sequence into our new sequence here. It is loaded up, as you can tell over here. All right. So now this is going to be the IK piano versus the Addictive Keys piano. So we have to replace track 2. What we could do as we did previously, and here is the AK Studio Grand there. We could do as we did previously and load that sequence up and then just pull in, if you remember how we did it last time, just pull in just the track that we need, okay, which would be right here, video 2 and 3 and 4. And of course we pull it in from about right there. And then we'd have our AK Addictive Keys video in there, just as we did last time. But let me do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to hop into this sequence here because we need this track right here, this Addictive Keys track. So what we'll do is I'll just lock to, well, I could actually grab it from either here or here. It doesn't really matter. I think in our case, I'm going to grab it from right here. That'll be fine. So let me just untick everything I don't need. Don't need. All I need is this here. I need video 2 because that's what this track is on. And I, of course, need our audio. So, ba-boom, right there. That's all we need. So that is going to be our in. As you can see, we marked an in. Now I'll come down to the end of where I want that to fade out. And right here is the end of our studio grand track from Addictive Keys there. It's locked to the end. Hit out. Very good. So now we have an in and an out placed and just video track 2 and audio track 3 and 4 selected. Okay. Very good. So now, in order to make a subsequence, first let me go and create a bin here, just so we don't get confused. So we'll say new bin. We're going to call this subs, okay, or subsequences, whatever you want to call it. And I, of course, have to find it. It's probably threw it way over here. Again, I usually work on 2 monitors because I have so many bins open here. But whenever you're recording a video, you can't really record 2 monitors or the aspect ratio is completely off. All right, so here is our subs bin. How do we create a sub sequence? Well, it's very easy. If you remember creating a sub clip, we just grabbed this here and we created a sub clip. You can even hover over this and see it says create sub clip. Well, same thing over here in our sequence. Again, we have our in and out marks right there. Okay, we have video track 2 and 3 and 4 selected. Now I could select more if I wanted to, but I just want this track here. This is our video 2 with our audio. So let's go ahead and create a sub sequence. Again, we have our marks in and out. Come right up here to this icon, create subsequence, grab it. I'm just going to drag it over into my bin. Pow, look at that. Now let me go ahead and name this. This is the AK Studio Grand, and I'll call it a sub. That way I know. Very good. You can see the icon is just like any other sequence. Okay. So now if I double click this, what's it load up? It loads up that sequence exactly from where I put my in, and it drops it exactly where we put our out. Everything is still rendered. Everything is ready and, good to go. So what do you say now? We head back to our sequences here. Let's head back to our IK Multimedia versus the AK Studio Grand, and we have to replace this mini grand track here. So I'll lock, let me just expand this so you can see a little better. Because I pulled that clip, the AK clips, I pulled them from right here. I'm going to lock to right here. Instead of locking to the beginning of this video track, I'm going to lock right here. Very good. Now I just have track 2 and 3 and 4 selected. Now we'll come to our subs bin here. If you don't have it open in whatever project you're in, just open that up. So what we'll do, now if I double click, that's just going to load it up into my timeline. I'm just going to grab it, throw it up here. There we go. You can see down here what tracks are available. 1 video track and 2 audio tracks. They are patched correctly for me. So now I can go and overwrite this. And also, by the way, keep in mind, you could mark ins and outs if you wanted to. You could pull it in from any position that you want to, but we want the entire thing. All right. So again, this is our sequence, our subsequence that we just created. We're in here in our IK versus Studio Grand project or sequence, and we have our track selected correctly. Now I'll just simply overwrite this in. Now watch this. Pow, look at that. Everything changed. So now we go through here and look at that. So now, of course, it did not affect our Grand Piano 1 track from IK Multimedia because we only had track 2 and 3 and 4 selected there. Look at that. Pow, 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 pow. And of course that works because I have everything edited the same way there, okay? Very cool stuff. So let's go ahead and delve a little deeper into this, just a little bit here. And we know we will need to replace this picture here because, of course, the full sequence that we cut in was the IK piano versus our mini grand. So this one, we want to cut in a different image here. So let's go ahead and use replace edit, or we could do something else a little different. We could use subsequences. We could head to an IK, or we could head to an AK project here and cut that in. But let me go ahead and use replace edit because in this case, it's just going to be easier. So let me grab my images bin here. Right here it is. We want our Addictive Keys Studio Grand image. Make sure I just have just that track selected. And that's the one I want. It's loaded up here. Now, I don't want to overwrite it in because, as you can see, that's going to throw it in right there, Control Z. What I want to do is replace edit. Untick that and grab it here. Replace edit. See what I did there? Had the wrong track. Video 3, not 2. Replace edit. There we go. Now I'll go in and find the effect I need for that, and that's in this bin here. And it's going to be the open right, I believe. There we go. Look at that. Completely set up. I might need to adjust it a little bit. Yeah, I'll have to move these over just a little tiny bit, I think. Let me monitor this top track here. And there we go. Yeah, I will need to definitely move those a little bit, or at least one of them. So let me just pop in here real quick and make sure I have that one selected. Just come down here, select these keyframes, and I'll just move this over a little bit. I want to make sure there's separation between those, even once they zoom in together. That would be fine, but I'm going to actually tweak it, just a slight bit here. Let's come over here, and I'm going to move this over just, yeah, that'll work. That's good. I just want to keep some separation between them, just so it's not overlapping. Very good. So we have that done. We could render that out if we want, which I guess I will here. It will take me a second to render this out. So I'll just mark my in there, out there, right click, and I'll just go and render into out here. Okay, so there we go. Right, okay, very good. So that looks good. We'll have to go and, of course, clean up our piano track a little bit, make sure our levels are the same. All right, but let's go ahead and go on and do another sub sequence and look at this a little more. We know that down here at the end, we also have our images. So I'm going to have to change out this mini grand image, which is right there. Now, I can do the same thing I already did, which is replace editing this in and throwing the effect on. That would honestly be the easiest way to do this, but I just want to show you the sub sequence way we could also do this. So what I'll do is I could, because I actually changed our sample tank 3 track just a little bit, you know how I had to nudge that effect over? I, of course, would have to do the same thing down here. So I already have this work done up here. Why not, why not just grab it from here? So we'll deselect the tracks that we don't need. Make sure we just have 2 and 3 selected because that's the tracks that these reside on. So right there, I'll hit I to place an in. Come on down here to the end, out. You can see right here, in and out, up here in our record monitor there. So what we'll do is let me find my subs bin. Open that up. Right here it is. And we'll just grab this subsequence, throw it in here. Go ahead and give it a name. This is AK images. Okay, there we go. Now we have our subsequence. And again, I can always, actually, let me save this real quick here. If I double click it, that's going to load it up in here. So creating a, keep that in mind because creating a subsequence, you might want to head in here into a subsequence and work on your sequence in its own timeline. Maybe that will be easier, than working on it in the in the full timeline. And then you can always edit your subsequence into your sequence in the same way that we've already done, just loading it right up in here. Go back to our actual sequences, just right here. Go and load that back up. All right, very good. So we already created our subsequence right there. And what we're going to do now to replace these two images, instead of, let me just grab it here. So instead of just using replace edit, let me remove these marks here. Remove those marks. Let me come down here to the end. Instead of just using replace edit, I'm just going to edit this subsequence. Again, I just drop it up in here into our source monitor there. Just drop it right up in there. Make sure I grab it from wherever I need it from, which in my case is going to be the beginning. Now, in this case, I don't need to mark it in and out because there's actually not enough footage, but that's, that's okay. Right there. I have my playhead parked right there. I have video tracks 2 and 3 selected there. So now I'll just overwrite this in this case, pop, and you can see right there. Now, you can see we have a little bit of a problem. All right. Let me actually monitor this track down here. You can see we have a bit of a problem. It doesn't extend long enough because this sequence is only like 4 seconds long. And we need about 7 or 8 seconds, 9. So for this end here. So this is actually not a problem in our case. I'm just going to grab this and I can pull this all the way to the end. And I can pull this one all the way to the end because, as I mentioned in the previous video about editing parts of a sequence into another sequence, we're pulling from the same data. So I'm pulling from these image files, which we already showed here. I'm pulling from these original files here. What a sequence is, a sequence just contains information about your clips, when they play, how they play, what effects are on the clips, when to play it, what audio to play, all that stuff. That's what your sequence contains. And it just contains basically pointers to your actual, to the actual video. So you can still edit a sequence into a sequence and then edit that sequence independently of the original sequence. You know what I'm saying? So we made a subsequence, right? We know we just made a subsequence that was about 4 seconds long, right here. Now I just edited that subsequence. Let me monitor this track. You can see it plays exactly perfectly. And whenever we go back to here, this is still just 4 seconds long. And it works just fine. Of course, I monitor this track up here. It plays back perfectly. 4 seconds here, somewhere around 8-9 seconds down here. There we go. Very cool stuff, man. Very cool stuff. So that is creating a subsequence. What do you say we continue on a little bit more here? I'm actually going to close this project. I'll finish it up later on. So let me go ahead and create a new project here. I'll just call it subs. All right. And we'll open this up. All right. Let me find my bin. It always throws it way over here for some reason. Put this back in place. All right. Very good. Very good. Now what we'll do is let's open a bin from a completely different project. Okay. So we'll come to our Avid projects and let's go to our Piano Wars master. And what do you say we grab our scratch bin, which again is going to throw it over here. I usually use 2 monitors, so that's why that happens. All right. So here we go. Let's go ahead and load this up. So say in, out. Let's go ahead and we'll just pop this in and we need to create a new sequence. So I'll just put it in my subs bin. Okay, we'll leave that to untitled sequence 1. Fine with me. We'll just say this is good here. Pop this in. Very good. So now we have 2 clips in this sequence, but just imagine we have a ton of clips in this sequence. Actually, I'm going to change this from untitled sequence 1 to just sequence 1. And also imagine we have a bunch of effects work done there as well. I'm not going to do it because that will take too long. So then we'll do a new sequence here. Just leave it in this bin here. We'll just call it sequence 2. That's fine. And now I need to open a bin. Actually, I don't. I should have it, shouldn't I? Yeah, here's my scratch bin. Very good. We'll just throw this in here. Throw this in there. There we go. We can see this sequence is overall about 26 seconds long there. Okay. Doesn't make much sense, but you'll see what we're doing here. All right, there we go. So again, imagine we have a bunch of sound beds and whatever in this sequence. Now we already know we can start editing sequences into sequences, but let's go ahead and make a sub sequence here because I want to show this here real quick. Let me actually create a new bin in this case. Say new bin. We're just going to call this subs. Okay. Weird name, but that's where we're going to throw our sub sequences. Pull this over here. So now what we're going to do is, let's say, mark an in here, out there, and create our sub sequence. Just throw it over here. This is our sub sequence. Very good. Now I'll come here and I'll do a new sequence. I'm going to call this main. There we go. So now we're in our main sequence, and for sequence 1, we throw this up here in our source monitor. So this is the whole sequence, but maybe I just want from here to there. That works. Go ahead and pop that into our main sequence. So that's that right there. Very good. And maybe that's too long. I can edit it. There we go. Very good. Now it's shorter, but I did not affect that sequence at all. It's still the full, let me remove the marks there, 11 seconds long. Okay. So you can have, you can go in and edit your sequences and your sub sequences in your main sequence, and you're not affecting that original sequence at all. Okay. It's just like, pretty much just like editing a clip, because as I mentioned, our sequences just contain information about our clips, where to play them, how they were set up, all of that good stuff. So now I'll come in here to our sub sequence. I'm just going to double click to load it up here on our timeline. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark, say, actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this, cut it, throw this here, grab this and cut it, throw it there. Okay, very good. So now if I double click again to load that up, you can see I have edited that sequence because we had that sequence loaded. Does that make sense? Right? But if we go back to sequence 2, which this sub sequence is from, double click, we still have the full sequence. Let me remove those marks. You can see the sequence is still full. Okay. So load the sub sequence that we just edited. Pop, pop. Okay. So now what we'll do, we have our sub sequence there. Let's go back to our main sequence. We can take our sub sequence here, throw it up here, and you can see, okay, maybe we just want from here to there. Then we want this right about there. Edit that in. There we go. Editing our sub sequence into another sequence. So hopefully all of that makes sense. Let's close this project and head back to our Piano Wars. Here we are. Okay, so hopefully all of that makes sense. Just remember there is a lot of ways you can work with sequences in other sequences here in Avid Media Composer. Not only can we pull full sequences, as we showed in a previous video, we can pull full sequences and load up into a new sequence and then edit or use it as a template. We can also pull in parts of another sequence, as we again did in a previous video. And we can also make sub-sequences of our sequences and then use those within different sequences, or as we did here also, we can use those sub-sequences within the same sequence. Okay, a lot of stuff you can do working with the sequences here. So again, maybe I want, say, video 2, and for some reason I want audio 1 and 2, which they're not related, but we can do that. In, out, I'll just use my subs bin here, and we'll make a sub of this. You can see it automatically has the name sub there, so we'll just leave it as it is. If I double click to load it up into our timeline, you can see that's exactly what it loaded up. Exactly what we have from our sub sequence there. So let me go back to my actual sequence, which is right here. Then I can then cut that into this sequence again, somewhere else down in our timeline, or I can cut it into a completely different project, a completely different sequence. Okay, so let me throw it up here. There is the sequence. And for some reason, I'm just going to, let me remove these marks. For some reason, I'm going to cut it in right here. Again, just use your imagination that it's some sort of work that you have already done that you are going to reuse. So there it is, man. Cut in again down here. All right, Control Z, because that makes no sense. All right, very cool stuff, man. Lots of different ways I could go in there and expand out here so I can get this right. Say out there. And I want to grab this there and not the audio. There we go. So I just want this part here now. Monitor the top track. I just want this to use somewhere down here. So I could copy and drag that. Again, we showed that in a previous video. Or I can create a subsequence. So there is our subsequence there, appended with sub02. I'll just leave it named as that. Maybe I want to load it up in here, and I can edit it, right, on its own without having the other stuff, you know, in a sequence. And then I could pop it in again somewhere else down the line in this sequence or in another sequence. Let me load up that sequence here, and maybe we want to pop that in our subsequence that we just created. Throw it in here. Maybe we want it right here for some reason. Let me remove those marks, and I'll just overwrite it in right here. And as you can see right there, it's completely rendered and everything because it was already rendered here. Because as I mentioned, we are pulling from the same exact data that this sequence, that subsequence references these actual, and in this case, image tracks, and this is a video track. This is a title track, which is a video. So that subsequence is referencing all of this media that we have already created. Okay. And we just edited it in again right here. We can do it again. Maybe we want it right here. Pop it in right there. There we go. Completely rendered out. Looking good. All right, man. So that is another way that you can work with sequences here in Avid Media Composer by creating subsequences. Just remember to select the tracks that you want. It can be multiple. It can be one. It can be whatever you want. All right. Create an in and an out. So mark your in and out. You can, of course, scrub up here if you want. If you don't want to scrub down here on the timeline, doesn't really matter. So say you're here, in and out, and then come right up here and grab your subsequence, drag it into a bin, give it a name if you want, and then you can grab it, throw it into your source monitor, and then just cut it in to the same sequence or into a completely different sequence whenever you want. Also, you could load up your subsequence into your record monitor and go in there and further edit it and then cut that into the same sequence or into a different sequence. Okay, so that is creating subsequences in Avid Media Composer.